Welcome back to Careers and Coffee Talk. I'm your host, Laura. Today, I'm joined by someone whose career journey embodies transformation, purpose, and the courage to realign with your true self. My guest, Gena Chieco, spent most of her first career as a lawyer, serving both terms of the Obama administration as a trusted advisor at the highest levels of the federal government before joining the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as counsel to the director. After more than a decade in Washington, D.C., Gena made a bold move in 2017 to join a clean tech startup in LA as general counsel. Yet her biggest shift came the following year when she decided to leave the legal and policy world behind to embark on a travel sabbatical and pursue something more aligned with her authentic self. Today, Jen is an executive coach and conscious leadership guide, helping others navigate change, burnout, and midlife awakenings with compassion and clarity. From public service to Paris, Gena's story is about listening to your intuition, trusting your timing, and redefining what success really looks like. So grab your coffee. This is a conversation about courage, connection, and finding your way back to yourself. Let's get into it. Gena, welcome. It's so good to have you. So good to see your face today.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so glad to be here.
I know there is quite the time difference between us, so I do appreciate you being on and joining quite late in the day for you.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Now, again, that being that it is kind of late in the day, do you have coffee with you today, or are you drinking
I
something
have
different?
tea,
Okay,
and
it's
I'm
like sleepy
currently,
time tea.
it's lemon herbal. I am currently nomading in France, and I'm in Brittany, which has stormy, rainy, chilly weather. And so
Okay.
I like this mug. It's not my own. It came with this house, but it has sunflowers on it. And so it reminds me of the sunshine. And I spent a lot of time in the Loire Valley earlier this year with lots of fields of sunflowers. The mug has special meaning for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I want to jump right into your story, which is just such an inspiring and interesting one. But first, I always like to start at the beginning. So, like little Jenna growing up, as a child, what did you dream of one day becoming?
Yeah, thanks you for starting at the beginning. So I grew up in rural northern Westchester, New York, and
Yeah.
our house was on several acres and it abutted a nature preserve. So I ran around barefoot in the summers, befriending insects, obsessed with Ranger Rick, which dates me a bit. And I was obsessed with Jane Goodall when I heard her story. She was the one that I aspired to be one
Yeah.
day. And I took AP Bio and we had to dissect rats in AP Bio.
Oh.
And it made me feel like I wasn't cut out to do like the full spectrum of experiences
Hmm.
with animals.
Sure.
But the environmental theme stayed prominent in my career.
Yeah. And you eventually got into like public service and, policy work. You served in both terms of the Obama administration, later at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Tell us first, how did you end up in government?
So, public service and giving back and volunteerism
Hmm.
was something that was instilled in me from a young age.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a random story how I first got involved with government. It was my first job out of college. I worked in the environmental division at the Justice Department, and
Okay.
I was in pre law. I, for some reason, never thought I would be a lawyer, but I had a friend who returned for homecoming after she had been at DOJ for a year, and she was the only one that was speaking about her first job out of college in like positive terms, and it sounded really intellectually stimulating. So I went for
Sure.
it. It was actually the only job I applied for pretty much. I was set to just move to San Francisco and figure it out. And I got the call for the Justice Department interview after I graduated college that
Okay.
summer after graduation. And I got the job and I went, and it allowed me to get really deep firsthand exposure to what the work is of a lawyer. Even though I was a
Hmm.
paralegal, I was doing substantive legal work under the supervision of an attorney. I got to assist at a trial in Puerto Rico, and it was precedent setting, and the whole trial team got EPA gold medals. So this job out of college just turned into be such an extraordinary opportunity. And from there, I decided to pursue the law and do public service law. I'd worked at the ACLU as the next job after DOJ, and I did clinics at Legal Aid, and I did a lot of one-on-one legal work. And through that, I learned I actually wanted to go macro again. So I had my sights set on some kind of policy legal work, bigger scale. I clerked after law school because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, which is a bit of a theme. During that time, I had been reading about and hearing about Barack Obama, and I was very inspired campaign. So I found a way to get to the Democratic National Convention in Denver, and I volunteered, and one thing led to another, and I ended up with the role of deputy voter protection coordinator in Virginia on the campaign. And then that opened doors to work at the White House and come to the Department of Homeland Security, which is where I met you, and
Yeah.
just kind of continued that thread of being involved with federal service.
Yeah, I love starting with kind of like what did you dream of being one day? Because
Mhm.
it's wild that, kind of the twists and turns that we take and, what we think we're going to do versus what we end up doing. And kind of what gets you into what inspires you to get into, some of those early roles, what you learn from those. So when you think back to maybe some of your big takeaways from those early experiences at DOJ, as a young attorney, right? Like, what were the biggest takeaways or biggest lessons in leadership or otherwise from those experiences?
Yeah, gosh, so many formative
So
lessons.
many.
I feel so fortunate because I worked with really extraordinary leaders. I was
Yeah.
lucky. And one of the biggest concepts in leadership that I was learning through those years that still resonates for me today is the concept of power over versus power with. So,
Mm.
power over leadership tends to be hierarchical, driven by
Hmm.
fear. There's often shame and blame and stress and like a lack of psychological safety. And there are some work environments that feed this power over. It's typically that sense of tone from the top, that if people at the
Sure.
top kind of swim in that power over dynamic, then everyone else is kind of trying to frantically keep up. And it just tends to erode performance and
Hmm.
morale. And it really is detrimental, but yet it's quite common. And then you have power with leadership, which is more of a collaborative, collective approach. It's about embracing all of our unique gifts and potential and collaborating and creatively solving problems. And it's like a we versus us versus them with the
Hmm.
power over. So I had the good fortune of working with the power with leaders and learned a lot firsthand on how impactful that is. Another thing that stood out to me when I look back on those years is I learned a statistic and I tried to find it. I don't know if it was like made up or what the source was, but I heard that only 2% of the population are born with tremendous innate leadership skills. That is,
Oh,
most who you
interesting.
see today who are extraordinary leaders have had to build that muscle and really devote time and resources and efforts to it. And I may be biased, but I think the Obamas were among the 2% who were born, just the way one of the key aspects of an extraordinary leader is integrity when words and actions are aligned, a kind of quiet confidence
Hmm.
that comes from really knowing oneself. And this canon of the really impactful extraordinary leader, there was someone I worked with at DHS, the Office of the General Counsel, David Martin. I don't know if you crossed paths. Who worked with him said that he made each of us feel like a favorite child. And it was just the way he was in his leadership, that he really genuinely was interested and excited and
Hmm.
encouraging and supportive. So when I look back on my career and I think about those early days when I was just stepping into leadership of my own, those are a couple of things that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. That for some people, it comes very naturally. For others, it's like something you kind of have to cultivate more, but it's always just like magic when you find that, in one of your leaders and what that can do for you in your own career development, right? I think now you've experienced like several different cultures coming from Westchester, Westchester, LA, Paris, DC. DC is a very unique culture, I think. And I'm someone
Yes.
who's kind of been, grown up in this area, but I think coming to DC can be an experience in and of its own, right? What was your experience just navigating DC culture as a young professional? And for you, what did you learn about resilience and your own authenticity here?
Yeah. Oh gosh. DC right out of college is such an extraordinary experience to be in the epicenter, our nation's capital, to
Hmm.
have exposure to the three branches of government. It's like a civics lesson every day. There were so many just life-changing experiences I had as a professional in DC, being at the Supreme Court when they handed down an opinion that had ripple effects throughout
Hmm.
society for the best, being at briefings on the Hill, staff on the Hill, and like understanding the hours that go into, as you can appreciate, even sentence in an amendment to a bill. You see the making, they call the expression the making of the sausage or whatever. It's like, as a young professional in DC, the world is your oyster. There's so much you can take advantage of. And as someone who is just very intellectually curious and wanting to be a sponge, I
Hmm.
was able to achieve a lot of my dreams of
Hmm.
just really reveling in everything that DC had to offer. There were also so many people who were drawn to DC out of a deeper purpose or passion, service, for NGO work. There's a joke that you might appreciate too, that DC tends to, the people with like Napoleon complexes that like they just were strivers, and so there was definitely like a mix of people. But I befriended people who are still friends, life. And I'll never forget too, like the first day working at the White House and the excitement and the sense of possibility and everyone coming together, even the highest ranked kids in a candy store, just all coming together for something, for to have a greater impact on society. It's really hard to put into words, feeling like
Mm.
you are writing the pages of history together. Just nothing compares to that. In terms of resilience and authenticity, um, one of the big things that I learned in my own journey and witnessing others was that we're capable of so much more than we
Hmm.
might ever comprehend. When I was a little girl, if someone said you're going to be a lawyer, I wouldn't believe it. If they said you're going to work at the White House, I wouldn't believe it. It's like, I think we set our sights for what seems within grasp from what we've been socialized to see as possible, or what we
Hmm.
see in our immediate circles. And being somewhere like DC, where there's just top talent and top intellectuals and the world renowned policy leaders, you
Yeah.
get exposure to see what you're really capable of. Another lesson was that life doesn't hand us anything we can't achieve.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of moments, particularly as young professionals in various roles in DC, where you are given a lot to navigate and manage. And it's kind of like fake it till you make it. And you just have to be resourceful and do what you can. I
Yeah.
mean, I look back on some things, like I briefed a principal at the White House for a briefing on the Hill, and I had never done that before. And I was like
Sure.
doing it by myself and putting together a binder of like hundreds of pages. So you just jump in and trust yourself, and you really build that muscle of self-reliance and resilience. With authenticity, I mean, authenticity is the way we form connections, and it is
Hmm.
such an integral element of being an empowered leader. It does take vulnerability to be authentic. And I think in DC in particular, I witnessed a lot of people are very buttoned up,
Mm.
not comfortable. And also there's been a lot of changes in leadership and culture in the workplace over these years since I started, gosh, like 20
Yeah.
something years ago, where people didn't really talk about personal stuff at work. And now,
Yeah.
yeah, if your kid's sick, if you're going through something, like you talk about it with trusted people. But back then it was kind of like you put your head down, you get it done. You don't ask for feedback. You don't ask for accolades. You're there to work.
Just do
Like
it.
work was like everything. So I guess with the city piece, I came to really appreciate the people who did open up and show more of their true self. It's something of a privilege to be able to fully show up and be authentic. And so something I learned as well.
So now, as a little girl, you certainly could not have dreamed of working one day at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. One, because it didn't exist
Yes.
back then. It is a younger agency. Tell me about that experience and, maybe what you learned about yourself in that time.
Yeah, so I was at a crossroads. I had been at the Department of Homeland Security for a while and I was kind of
Hmm.
craving something more. And I was contemplating leaving federal service, but I thought I don't want to leave until I fully maximize the potential of being in federal service. And I eyed the CFPB because I think it was 4 years old at the time when I joined, which
Uh-huh.
is like fetal compared to
Yeah.
other agencies
Sure.
that have been around for forever. And it seemed like it really had a startup culture, which I was
Mm.
intrigued by. And the talent there seemed extraordinary. And the director I had heard was phenomenal. And so I ended up joining the CFPB first as an attorney in their Office of the General Counsel. And then I took on the role of executive secretary, which you know what that is since you've been in government, but my family and friends were like, oh, you have a law degree. Why are you a
Like
secretary
doing
now? And
what?
yeah, so the exec sec coordinates like all the public facing materials that go out the door, the director's briefing book. I also held the role of counsel to the director. So I was doing substantive work. We also have the responsibility of clearance, which I think you and I had connected at
Hmm.
DHS over clearance. So it's the exec sec office is strategic, it's operations, it's really pivotal to the functioning of the agency. And then serving as counsel to the director, I was able to do more of a deep dive on policy and legal work. And it was transformative. Those I was there for, I think, 4 years total, were like major growth moments for me. And one of the key learnings during that time was that I was really loving leadership development. And I was starting to feel like I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a lawyer anymore. I was gravitating
Yeah.
more towards leadership development. And I got to work closely with the CPB's chief of staff, who's great. And I started to get intrigued by the chief of staff role as well. So I kind of was keeping this all in the back of my mind and contemplating what would come next. The election was happening soon, and I was
Yeah.
kind of just waiting to see what might happen with the election
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Now here's where you kind of, I think, experienced what you described as I'm going to use my quotation fingers, midlife awakening.
Yeah.
What sparked that realization, that you needed maybe a change?
Yeah. So I joke that I had two midlife awakenings, part one and part two,
Okay.
but I did you in the moment when you're going through it, you think it's a crisis and everything's falling
Like this is
apart.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Right.
typically only in hindsight that you look back and are like, oh, it was awakening. There was like a silver lining. So part one was working at the CFPB. I had hoped to
Hmm.
stay in federal service depending on the election results, but with the change in administrations, I knew I needed to leave federal service.
Hmm.
And on a personal note, I went through a divorce, and also like life decided to throw in a couple other crises on top of it. So these things that were really integral to my identity were kind of all burning down at once. And
Hmm.
I thought it was just going to be a really tough road ahead and having a hard time getting a job and feeling lost. And I was just stuck. Like that
Yeah.
was really hard. There's a haiku that's abbreviated to Barns burnt down. Now I can see the moon, from a 17th century Japanese poet and samurai. And that was like
Yeah.
actually kind of what happened unexpectedly. I had a Phoenix rising experience out of the ashes and chose Los Angeles as a city to move to take on the role of general counsel and chief of staff at a clean tech startup. And
Hmm.
I made a lot of choices at that time. One of the, I think, common themes for people who feel like they've been through an awakening is things that you had been doing for a lot of your life are no longer giving you the same level of meaning or fulfillment.
Yeah.
Or what can sometimes happen is we do all the things that we think are going to bring us success and, quote, happiness. We get the jobs, the titles, the income, the status, whatever it might be. And we can't shake this feeling deep down that something's missing. And
Mm.
I had been carrying that feeling that something was missing for a while. And I just internalized it and thought, maybe I'm depressed. Maybe something's wrong with me. Who am I to complain? I'm living this amazing life. But I couldn't shake that feeling. And so when I came to this startup, I thought, okay, maybe this will explain why I was feeling discontent with the law. I've been in federal service most of my career, so now I'm private sector. It's fast paced. It's a true startup. And I learned a
Hmm.
ton. It was a really exciting time and so many growth lessons from there. But ultimately, I did learn that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. And I really started to become clear to answer your question of like what precipitated the part two, the true
Yeah,
awakening,
yeah, yeah.
leaving the startup, leaving the law, embarking on a travel sabbatical was because I had done all the things that I thought would bring me this deeper meaning and purpose and
Yeah.
fulfillment. And it just wasn't coming to me. And so it maybe seemed a bit dramatic at the time, but I felt I had this yearning to just leave it all and embark on this new adventure. And I also had experienced burnout at the startup.
Yeah.
And that is something I had never experienced before. I had worked really long hours in my career. I mean, nothing is longer
Sure.
hours than a
Hmm.
campaign. And like some of the political appointee roles were very demanding. I didn't know. It's like one of these things. It's like
You didn't
life.
know it could get worse.
It's like life lesson number 10 trillion. I didn't know burnout. I didn't know what burnout was. I thought I was
Yeah.
invincible. And I didn't know that burnout is not about long hours. It's also typically is around a dysfunctional workplace or toxicity,
Mm.
lack of autonomy, managing. It's like when you can't show up and fully be you and activate your skills and your gifts and perform to your true potential. It really dims our light and causes us to
Hmm.
entrench and like it leads to a lot of health issues. So that was a wake up call for me as well. Was I've got burnout. I'm not feeling fulfilled by the law anymore. It's like if not now, when? If not who? Why not me? And if I
Yeah.
had been braver, I would have taken a sabbatical after I left federal service in 2017. But I was really filled with fear and limiting beliefs. I was discounting all my experiences and thinking, who's going to hire me in the private sector? I've only been in
Mm.
government. And so I got startup job because I thought I needed to. And in hindsight, I have no regret. And so I would do it all over again. But
Of
it
course.
turns out that sometimes we, I think, have yearnings for pursuing things that are going to lead us to really powerful chapters. And they may be whispers and they may be easy to ignore, but they're like drum beats. And
Hmm.
so for me, leaving the law behind, taking a sabbatical, resetting, restoring the essence of who I am. That those are all things that had just been building over
Yeah.
time.
And it really sounds like it was more of like a gradual realization, or like you said, a build up than like a single moment. Or is there a single moment that you can point to that was like, no, this is it. Like I'm ready to take the leap.
Yeah. What's that expression? Like death by a thousand paper cuts.
Of course.
That was a lot of it. I mean, I was going through this transformative time of learning to set boundaries and healing
Hmm.
deeper stuff and immersing myself in philosophers and spiritual leaders and just starting to see the ways that I had unknowingly held myself back or kind of been living a life on a vision that wasn't truly my own. So
Hmm.
there's a real kind of retelling my own narrative, rewriting the
Yeah.
script, starting over.
Yeah. And you mentioned like not being brave enough to take a sabbatical earlier. I mean, that the idea, even if it's something that you're really yearning for, I mean, the idea of that can be quite terrifying. So I mean, kudos to you for doing it. Maybe the timing wasn't right earlier in your career, but you did eventually.
Yeah.
What did taking that sabbatical teach you about your identity and your self-worth outside of work?
Oh gosh, so much. And I'm reminded of a quote. So Alexander Den Heijer said, "You often feel tired, not because you've done too much, but because you've done too little of what sparks a light in me."
Mm,
And I think so much of my career, I had been running on adrenaline and vapors and thinking that that was energy and aliveness, but it was external, it was short lived, it was hits of intense surges of adrenaline
Yeah.
crashing. I mean, I just thought that was normal. That's the way I lived my life. And so the sabbatical was an opportunity, and I didn't know any of this at the time. I just was like, peace out, I'm leaving. I booked a one-way ticket to Paris. It's like, I love
The
to
dream.
travel. Yeah, I'm like, I've always loved to travel, and I know it'll bring
Yeah.
me home to myself in one way or another. And it was really like kind of like feeling like a bit of a crisis. Like I was very lost, confused, and just getting away. And through the course of the sabbatical, what happened, and I know this in hindsight, even though it wasn't necessarily clear at the time, because at the time it was like, I'm in a crisis, a midlife crisis, not a midlife awakening, was that I really restored the essence of who I am. And when I think of it in terms of like mind, body, heart, soul. So my body, I think, not to generalize, but particularly as women, we often have a fraught relationship with our body. We are taught to like hate on our bodies. But the truth is, our bodies are sacred. They house our mind and heart and spirit. And I got really into running unexpectedly. I was like 40. I never really liked running, but I would take off at sunrise and see the sights with no tourists. And I began to really appreciate the power of my body and like the ability to get strong for really like I was an athlete growing up, but it felt different this time. It felt like a reclaiming and really honoring like nutrition and sleep and taking care of myself and seeing my body as sacred. With my mind, there's an expression, I think it's from Joanna Macy, who talked about being a brain on a stick. Like my intellectual side really ran the show. I found a lot of sense of belonging and like community and safety and success through my brain, but it was to the neglect of everything else. And a lot of what I pursued in my life intellectually was like not necessarily lighting me up, but more about the shoulds. Like when I was at DHS, people were like, you should really go into cyber. And I was like, I'm not really enthused about reading about cybersecurity every day, but like, let's give this a shot. So on my sabbatical, lighting up my brain was just purely out of intellectual curiosity and what I was excited about. With the heart space, we're often socialized to see certain emotions as weak, bad, or shameful. And like, I've been in therapy for a long time, but this was a real time of I met my emotional landscape and I started to see the full spectrum of emotions as really powerful and something to honor. If we ignore our emotions or push them away or numb or distract, it tends to make them grow bigger within us. And so that sabbatical was a time that I came to a lot of realizations about the power of emotions. And in terms of spirit, like those years that I was in DC, if anybody talked about spiritual stuff, I think my eyes glazed over, or I just was uncomfortable, or like, okay, that's like woo, what are you talking about? But now that I'm, especially after living in LA, I mean, I appreciate when I talk about spirit, it's like the things that allow us to feel like we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. If we look at the stars, if we're in nature, if we are deeply connected on one and we feel like a fabric of humanity, like awe and wonder and magic and like those are the things that really light up our spirit. And I just didn't have a relationship with that for a lot of my life. So honoring mind, body, heart, soul was a big piece of my sabbatical. The expressions, the 0 Fs, like just not caring anymore. Like after spending so much time caring about what other people think and how they see me and how I'm appearing and how I'm showing up, it was so liberating to just shed the masks and the shoulds and show up and be me authentically and not filter and not spend time stressing about anything, but just to like be me was something that was born. The last thing I'll say about the sabbatical was kind of getting a sense of deeper purpose in life. When I was younger, I took this kind of like type A approach to purpose. Like, I'm going to figure out my purpose. And I did assessments. It was like this, like, get shit done. I'm going to figure it out and grind and like make it work. And that's not how we tap into our purpose. Our purpose is like a treasure buried within us. And to really surface our purpose, we need to feel safe in like allowing our gifts to really be seen. Like there's a courage and a vulnerability there. And so I came to appreciate that, particularly when it comes to career coaching. A lot of times people are like, well, what do you love? Oh, great. You love to cook. What about being a professional chef? But, and that might be the path for some people, but for some of us, it's like, if you love to cook, cook. If you love poetry, read poetry. If you want to sing and dance and like, go volunteer at a camp, like whatever it is that sparks that sense of aliveness, that's the path to excavating to deeper purpose. And it's not about monetizing any of this stuff. It's just, when we come fully alive, that's when our purpose surfaces. So that was
Hmm.
a big part of the sabbatical for me as well.
Yeah, that's so, I mean, it's very eat, pray, love. I love that
Yes.
you were able to take the time to like just reset and figure out what it was that like sparked joy for you. How was it? So like you're in Paris, you're like running through, I imagine like the countryside. I don't enjoy running either, by the way, but maybe if I were in Paris, I would
Yeah.
maybe. But how did you find your way into from there into coaching?
Yeah. So I was lost,
Yeah,
confused. If you knew me back then and asked what I thought I would want to do, I'd be like, I don't know. And even just the
right.
question would totally stress me out because I knew I didn't want to be a
Sure.
lawyer anymore, but it was very
Hmm.
scary. Like, who am I if I'm not a lawyer? Because a lawyer is one of those it's like a vocation. It's like I am a lawyer. It was like such a big, and I've invested so much
It's
time and
a
money.
big
So
part of who you are, right?
yeah, so I was super lost, and I had been to a workshop with Martha Beck, whose
Hmm.
program I ended up doing. She's very woo. She's
Hmm.
very out there, but some of her some of her central teachings are around authentic self versus social self, and I kind of intuitively knew that that was what I needed to do next. Was when we talk about social self, it's like from a very young age, we internalize messages from society, from our family. We walk a line. We try to be the good girl and get the good grades, and like it often we confuse conformity with belonging. Like belonging is when we're truly seen and held and met for our deepest truths, for our essence. Conforming
Hmm.
is shape shifting and dimming our light and wearing masks and acting a certain way to fit in. And
Yeah.
a lot of us do end up conforming out of necessity to seek security and survival and whatnot. But I just was starting to sense, I joke I was like a walking cluster of coping mechanisms. Not even, I was totally in denial. I was like people pleaser, but I thought I was so
Hmm.
independent, workaholic for sure. Like work was the biggest part of my identity, perfectionism, out of control. Like I just had all these things that I didn't want to be holding me back anymore. And I
Yeah.
thought I'll take her coach training program, not to be a coach. I didn't even know what coaching was, but I just thought I need to immerse myself. I'm not self-disciplined enough to do it on my own. I need the support and structure of a program, and it'll be like a boot camp. And I really was somewhat surprised that through the course of the program, I learned that I really love coaching, and coaching is aligned with what I see as my
Yeah.
deeper purpose. It was to the surprise of no one in my life that I started talking a lot about coaching and wanting to be a coach. But I did, so I did Martha Beck's coach training program in the course of my sabbatical as well. And on my sabbatical, I started in Paris and I ended up backpacking through like 10 countries in 3 months. And I went to Mexico and traveled domestically as well. And after I concluded the coach training program, I wasn't ready to be a coach full
Hmm.
time. Like I still had some stuff to work through with that. And so I ended up serving as a chief of staff for an early stage startup
Okay.
for a 3 month consulting project. And I thought that answered all my questions. And I would like, I'd arrived and all the midlife
Hmm.
crises and awakenings led to this moment because it was creative. It was a fashion company, amazing founder, just super exciting. Like it really
Yeah.
was, as far as a more traditional role went, it was the greatest possibility imaginable for me. At
Right.
the end of the 3 months when the contract ended, they didn't have the funding to keep me on. And I knew in my heart that I really wanted to launch a coaching business. So that's when I took that leap into coaching full time.
Yeah. What was it about it that really resonated for you?
Yeah, it was. So basically, her teachings around authentic self versus social self,
Hmm.
she gives you a lot of different frameworks and tools to pursue self discovery
Hmm.
in relationship with a coach, or for me, it was like on my own as a participant
Yeah.
in the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things like somatic coaching, which is understanding the wisdom that we hold in our
Hmm.
body, things like unique genius, understanding fear, like
Hmm.
relationship to fear. Her program really sets you up as a coach to work with people who are in transitions
Yeah.
in different spaces in their life, personally, professionally, navigating, career changes, divorce, empty nesting, you name it. I mean, the only constant is change. We're kind of always going through
Yeah.
transformative periods, but we're creatures of comfort and control, and we don't like change, even if we think we do. So those were some
Hmm.
of the things that really resonated for me. And she is a walking, talking emblem of authenticity. She lives her life on her own terms. She's brilliant. She's like multiple degrees from Harvard, and she's one of the trailblazers for coaching. She started coaching, I think, in like the 80s before it was
Oh,
even
wow.
a thing. And
Yeah.
she's very honest about her path and what led her to where she is now.
Yeah. You also talked a lot about the difference between authentic self and social self. So how
Yeah.
do you help people reconnect when it comes to that, authentic self?
Yeah, I was just laughing thinking about if, and I've thought about this before, but if I were to create like a starter kit for
Yeah.
becoming your
Yeah.
authentic self, it would be learning to set boundaries
Mm,
is huge, especially not to generalize, but often as women and men struggle with this too. It's like to express a need makes us needy and it's weak and it's uncomfortable. And so I'm just going to
mm,
not express my needs to anybody. And it just causes resentment and suffering. And so setting boundaries is really about honoring we have energy, gifts, and who are we going to give it to. And I talked about embracing deeper purpose. I talked about zero F's, like just letting go of the coping mechanisms, the survival strategies, the people pleasing, healing those. It's a journey. It's really exciting. I remember when I first started the healing journey, just feeling daunted by it. Like I had so many issues and it was going to take so long and it was hard and it was uncomfortable and it was causing shifts in relationships. And is it, and still like it's a lifelong journey, healing and
hmm.
evolving. I see now just such a sense of inspiration and possibility that we are all capable of growing and metamorphoses like caterpillar butterfly, that it's never too late, that we all have, there is some level of privilege in healing and
Hmm.
some of this work, like hiring a coach, working with a therapist, but there is also a lot we can do on our own. So much of living authentically to with the coping mechanisms that I've talked about is coming to terms with the fact that our society has systems that
Hmm.
are built on legacies that are detrimental to women, to people of color. And many of us, we internalize these at late stage capitalism, that our worth, like so many of us feel like our worth is only tethered to making money, and
Yeah.
productivity is just about our job. But we're dynamic, multifaceted human beings. And many of the most profound impacts we have on people are in the quiet moments, like
Hmm.
kindness to strangers, time with family. So that's a big piece of authenticity too, is understanding like our essence and understanding the ways we've developed certain strategies, survival mechanisms to seek safety and belonging, and then to see the ways that these things can be detrimental.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about how people hold back from embracing their full selves or authentic selves, especially in the workplace. What do you think are the most common fears or beliefs that keep people from embracing their full selves at work?
Oh gosh, fear is a big one, and that is part of living authentically
Mm.
too. Answering your other question is developing a relationship with fear,
Hmm.
because fear is pretty constant, and anytime we make a change, there's going to be fear. Even if we're changing
Mm.
for the best, we're going to have
Yeah.
fear, because like our ego reptilian brain, it just wants to keep us in the same place forever. I often joke we'd sooner stay in a familiar hell than leap into an unknown paradise, because
Yeah.
the unknown is scary. And so one of the things just in general about fear is beginning to understand what is clean fear, something that's actually threatening us, like a tiger chasing us, versus what we might think of as like a cloudy fear, like a
Hmm.
legacy system, fear of failure, fear of
Hmm.
success, fear of being too much or too little or too outspoken, or like all
Mm.
those things that we've internalized as truths that aren't truth. That kind of cloudy fear causes suffering in us. And it's kind of like the boogeyman, where you can be so deeply afraid of something and think it's real, and you turn on the lights and nothing's there. So I'd say with fears holding people back, and especially women in the workplace, some of it is real. It's like if you've literally been excluded from having a seat at the table, if there's no
Hmm.
representation, you're going to be afraid to step into that space because you don't know if it can be done. And speaking truths can be
Yeah.
scary, because if you're the canary in the coal mine, it's hard. Like you're going to get a lot of pushback, and sometimes it's better to just stay quiet and keep going. Imposter phenomenon is like pretty universal. Like I have yet to
Hmm.
meet a successful woman, or and men have it as well,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
don't suffer from imposter phenomenon. And imposter syndrome is the nutshell of it is like back when we're little and we're craving unconditional love and belonging and safety from our caregivers. You know, our caregivers do the best they can with what they know, but sometimes they're not able to give us that. And I don't even know if humans are capable of unconditional love to begin with, but like our parents do the best they can with what they know. But in those moments when we're not met and held and feel truly unconditionally loved, we begin to tell ourselves a story that something's wrong with us, that we're not enough,
Hmm.
that we're defective. If I
Hmm.
get the good grades, if I'm perfect, all those things. And so we end up in those moments where we're starting to outsource our sense of self-worth and our sense of self. There's a disconnect between our truths and reality. And so what happens with imposter syndrome spiking is if we take on a new job, there's a
Hmm.
voice in us of what if I fail? What if I mess up? What if they don't see me as smart as I want to be? Or
Yeah.
it's basically like that emotional gremlin of not enoughness
Yeah.
gets like exposed. All those, and it's not conscious, it's like subconscious as kids to feel
Hmm.
not enough. It's not like kids are going around being like, I'm not enough, but it's just something buried within us. And then when we stretch, when we have a big presentation, when we're public speaking, like whatever it may be, those imposter phenomenon gremlins start to surface. Inner
Yeah.
critic is like the voice of imposter syndrome. And so those are some things that hold people back from embracing their full selves.
Yeah.
And the good news is we can heal all of these things.
We just have to go on sabbatical in Paris
Yeah.
for No, just kidding. Well, when it comes to leadership, right? Like how can leaders help to bring more of that, compassion and humanity into whether it's the corporate environment, government space, especially when so many people are, I mean, as a woman, I think it's almost reassuring when I hear that men also experience imposter syndrome
Yeah.
or that or that it's not just me, other
Yeah.
people are feeling it too. We're all kind of dealing with it on different levels. So as leaders, what can we do to help people going through transition, uncertainty, whether it's in the situation or, within oneself?
Yeah, great question. There's a framework that I love. Brene Brown. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown, and she has a Braving Trust framework, and it's boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, and generosity. And you can Google it, and there's a downloadable sheet on it. But I really like that framework, and it speaks to bring more humanity, intuition, compassion into workspaces is to be deeply human
Mm,
and to reveal we don't have all the answers.
hmm.
We might be having a hard time with something. It's braving uncomfortable conversations
Yeah.
sometimes that are really for the best, but are hard to have. And there's a concept that I like to think about of stretching 10% into more vulnerability or more compassion or more
Hmm.
humanity. So let's say we have a way of talking about something and we stop at a point that feels safe and comfortable for us. What if we stretch 10% more and we share a little bit more? We open ourselves up. And it's really amazing. And I imagine like you and all of your listeners have personally experienced this, but it can feel really scary to share something personal and then you share it. And one hand, you might feel a little bit initially uncomfortable, but then there's usually a sense of relief that I was
Mm,
able to share this. And then typically the other person similarly shares something. Like
yeah.
everyone, being human is really hard. It's
Yeah.
messy, it's unpredictable. We all grew up with this idea of like a linear passage of everything gets better and you ride off into the sunset but really life is up and down and ebbs and
Hmm.
flows and unpredictable and crises happen and we do the best we can to navigate them. And so to be a brave leader, as Brene talks about, is showing up and being deeply human and like giving a bit of ourselves to a team and
Hmm.
trusting that they'll meet us,
Yeah.
that's where progress and growth really happens.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, being a human is chaotic and messy and up and down. It's also very relatable, right? Like we
Yes.
all have these like very common experiences and feelings and things. And so I think just like you said, opening up, sharing those is just we relate more than we don't. Um, so we talked a little bit about, of course, living in Paris. You mentioned living in LA. How has that, and traveling to different countries, right, during your sabbatical, how has that perspective of just being very international influenced your own worldview?
It all started, I did semester at sea in college where you
Oh
travel
yeah,
around the world
that's
on a
awesome.
cruise ship. Even though we traveled around the world, I saw more maybe that I would see in the rest of my life. Like it made the world seem so much bigger because I felt like we had barely scratched the surface. Like I
Yeah,
traveled through so many different countries and had so many experiences, but like barely scratched the surface. So living in Paris, Los Angeles, DC, one of the biggest takeaways, and it really started on semester C as well, that no matter where we're from, what our backgrounds are, there are these threads that bind us together. And that's what gives me hope. And that's what allows me to feel this deeper purpose in the work I'm doing
hmm
as a coach is to help surface in others their own sense of their humanity, of connections. With the rise of technology and screen time and devices, many of us are disconnected from ourselves. When you travel a lot, you see what you have in common and what you care about, like
yeah,
family and building beautiful memories and you appreciate too, there's so much kindness from strangers. Like it's everywhere, but for some
yeah,
reason I really notice it when I'm traveling, maybe because there's more moments where I'm like lost or confused or living in France, I've been invited into strangers' homes several times and like
hmm
it's been magic. That's something that's influenced my worldview a lot. From
yeah.
I feel so fortunate and privileged to have these experiences.
Yeah, that's incredible. When it comes to the French culture in particular, what is something that it's taught you, whether it's about slowing down or that sense of community that you maybe wish we embraced more here in the US?
One thing I really appreciate is the experience of time in
Hmm
a couple ways. One is you can round a corner and be among ancient dolmens dating back like hundreds of thousands of years. Like you walk into a church from the 12th century, there's
hmm
Roman ruins. It's really expands that sense that we're just like a grain of sand on a massive beach of time. Like
Yeah.
the insignificance, the fleetingness of this life. The other part around time that I really appreciate here is things shut down every day for lunch. Things aren't open, businesses aren't open. Like Paris, the best restaurants are usually closed Saturdays and Sundays. Like it's just, they
hmm
really seem to appreciate quality of life and balance and what matters and having these lunch breaks for 2 hours every day when
Yeah.
things shut down. And I remember being in a town and there was some kind of a festival going on and a lot of the storefront businesses were closed. And I was like, it's a Saturday. Like, if this is a US hyper like capitalism, everything would be open. They'd be having sales. It would be like business, business,
Yeah.
business. But here it just seems like it's not about that as much. And so I appreciate that message a lot. It's like a slow way of living, savoring
Mm.
what really matters, the finer things, the beauty, the magic.
Yeah. Amazing. It's a little bit different from like probably forgetting to eat your lunch at your desk
Yeah.
at, you know.
Days
Yeah.
of eating power bars at my desk. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, tell us what's next for you? Projects, courses, retreats. What are you looking ahead to?
I lead an annual retreat in Provence, and this year I actually did two. Next year I have one planned for May, so I'm looking forward to that. And the theme is Restore, Reclaim, Reignite, and it's aligned with many of the things we talked about today, stepping into integrated, embodied, conscious leadership, which is really fully knowing ourselves and embracing our gifts and shedding things holding us back. I've been doing a workshop series that's open to anybody, and I have one coming up. It's inspired by an experience speaking of Eat, Pray, Love, I had an experience with Elizabeth Gilbert. So I went to the workshop I went to with Martha Beck. Elizabeth Gilbert was there too. And Elizabeth Gilbert had us do a letter writing experience. And one of them was around permission. And in that letter, I gave myself permission to quit the startup job and take my sabbatical. And then last year I was at a workshop with Elizabeth Gilbert, and I had a chance to walk with her one-on-one and express gratitude and like share with her that I've been using these letters with my coaching work. And I was like, I hope it's okay. I tried to contact your agent to make sure it's okay. I'm using these letters. And she's like, oh my gosh, Gena, like, you don't even need to give me credit. And I was like, I'm giving you credit. You're Elizabeth Gilbert. So I'm just looking at my calendar. I think it's November 18th. At 1 p.m. Eastern time. And I posted about that on LinkedIn. I also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. I'm trained in career coaching, life coaching, and executive coaching. So I just like to meet clients where they are and offer a customized approach to them.
Yeah. Where can people go to find these offerings? Where can they follow your work?
I am on Instagram, and it's moonlight_musings_, inspired by that haiku I mentioned. I'm on Substack, and that's at Moonlight Musing singular. The plural was taken already.
Okay.
My website is my first last name, www.GenaChieco.com. And I am also on LinkedIn.
Awesome. We will share all those resources here if you're watching the video or in the episode description. Couple last questions. For someone who's standing at the edge of a big life or career pivot, as so many of us, including myself, are, what advice would you give?
Gosh. First and foremost, thank you for your service,
Thank
and
you.
honoring the grief that comes and the spectrum of emotions that comes from a career chapter ending not on our own terms and perhaps detrimental terms like that. It's very significant. And I think there's a tendency to want to just move forward and push it away. And like, why am I crying about a job? Like, this is ridiculous. But especially for public servants, your career is a calling. Many people have dedicated their entire lives to these careers. They're top in their fields. It's community, like all of a sudden being severed from your community. So I'd say honor the grief, the range of emotions, and know that they're all valid. Again, getting back to fear, there's always fear whether we're thrust into a transition or we choose the transition, there's fear. It's kind of like the movie There Will Be Blood. It's like there will be fear. So developing a relationship with fear. And for what it's worth, from working with hundreds of clients and in my own life, these transitional periods are called liminal spaces, the epicenter of transformation. Like, as hard as they are, we often come out of them and we are really fundamentally changed. Yes. So just keeping that in mind, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's a quote I wanted to share too. It's by Hansen, who said, "There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky. And you ask, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly?" So just knowing that wherever you are at the precipice, we can cling to the edge and not want to let go. But when we let go, our wings can expand and we can soar. And community, like tapping into community, phone calls, coffees, catching up, career exploration, life exploration. People like to share their stories. It's not about what do I have to give them. And I don't know. A lot of people feel like, oh, I don't know what I want to do next. How can I have a conversation with someone about my career? But it's really so much about just connecting with people and hearing more about their
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. And there's something so very deeply empowering about that. Kind of the idea that Careers and Coffee Talk was founded on.
Yes, exactly.
Um, if I were a betting girly, I would be willing to bet that this has probably evolved quite a bit for you. When you think about how you personally define success, today, how do you do that? How do you personally define success?
I aspire to have a big little life. I don't need much. Most important is having a professional path that's purposeful, where I'm having an impact and just a part of making the world a slightly better place. Those are some of the ways I define success. Time is freedom. So spaciousness for me, unstructured time is worth more than gold.
Yeah.
And yeah, just focusing in general, I'd say a path towards deeper fulfillment is getting clear on your unique constellation of what really deeply matters to you and trusting that that's your North Star.
Yeah. I love that so much.
Thanks.
Um, Finish this sentence. For me, a career well lived is.
Embracing our unique genius and activating a deeper purpose to be of service in some form or fashion and have a lasting impact and ripple effects.
Yeah,
And
I love
I
that.
think, thanks. I think too, these days in particular, portfolio careers, fractional roles, I think we're like cats. We're meant to have many lives. Whereas in the past, it was like one job for 50 years. Like I
Yeah,
think
right.
embracing, if you want to pivot, if you want to try something new, it's never too late. It's if you feel like it's written in you, it probably is.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end it. Gena, thank you so much for being here and inspiring, hopefully, some other folks who are experiencing these big transitions or big changes, whether it's in life or in their careers. I think there's so much insight that you had to share, so we really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, Laura. It's been such an honor and privilege and joy to be here. And I always like to think back on younger selves. And when I think back on our younger selves working at 𝐷HS/Affairs, if someone told us that I was going to appear on your fabulous podcast all of these years
Who
later,
who
who would have
knew?
believed it? Yeah. Who believe
Who
it?
even knew back then what a podcast was?
Oh, that's true. It
I
might have
don't
been
think that was a
pre-podcast.
thing.
You're
Thank you so much. This has been fun.
right. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of Careers and Coffee Talk. Big thanks to our guest today for pouring out so many great insights. And hey, thanks to you for hanging out with us. If this episode gave you a little jolt of inspiration or made your day a little bit more brewed and balanced, be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. Got a minute? Drop me a 5-star review. It's basically the podcast equivalent of buying me a fancy oat milk latte. Quick disclaimer though, the views expressed in this episode are personal and do not reflect those of any organization. This conversation is not an endorsement of any company, product, or service. It's just real talk over virtual coffee, okay? So until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing the career that makes you feel the most alive. Catch you next time.